We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Good afternoon. I'm Frank.
And I'm Ruslan.
And we're on our show, The Cool Classics. Here we are, our initial show, and we're really happy to be here on latalklive.com because here on LA Talk Live, we are more
Than just talk.
That's right, Ruslan. I think we got that one down. Welcome. What date is it today, Ruslan?
It's January 8th.
Thursday, January, right?
And it's noon.
Oh, it's noon. Good time.
Good
And you know,
time, yeah.
prior to our getting here, I found a great bakery here in LA, and we loaded up on carbs and Napoleons and
And
cookies.
coffee.
And so we're ready to go here on latalklive.com. Ruslan,
Yes.
how
Frank.
are you?
I'm okay.
You're looking good.
Oh, thank you. You too.
And you know, I think that one of the last times I talked to you, you were at the gym, and
Yes,
it looks like
yesterday.
it looks like it paid off.
Yeah, the tanning booth. You know, everyone is asking, oh, you live in Los Angeles, have such a nice tan. So, yeah, thanks to tanning booth.
Oh, is that what you did last night?
Yes, 5 minutes every other day, yeah.
Well, you know what? I do that at my studio. I get so kind of bound up in the indoors. I kind of get out there and sit in the sun for about 10 minutes and read every day in my garden, and that sun feels really good.
And I feel so jealous.
Well, you're welcome to come over anytime, and it's kind of an Italian paradise over there. But we're here, and because we love music, we love the arts, and of course, Ruslan is one of the finest cellists anywhere.
And Frank is one of the most prominent and one of the most amazing conductors anywhere.
And that's why we work together all the time. we feel we can really stand one another.
We respect each other.
That's right.
That's why we are respectful people.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. And you know, we do have a project coming up this week, don't we?
Oh yeah, that's correct.
You
yeah,
tell 'em-
Saturday,
tell 'em-
Saturday night.
Yeah. Okay. Tell our
Saturday
listeners
night.
about that.
Well, it's Glendale Philharmonic, our wonderful orchestra, and it's holiday concert and birthday party with the free cake. 7 p.m. at the First Baptist Church of Glendale, and we'll have a wonderful, wonderful program that, you know, Maestro Frank Fetta will be conducting. Yours truly will be the soloist. Mozart Symphony.
Yes, and I think you actually may have heard a little bit of that Mozart Symphony when we started.
Just in the beginning of our show.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's
yeah.
the first movie. You know that he composed it when he was 8 years of age.
8 years old. Oh my gosh, I could hardly speak when I was 8 years old.
I was fighting my parents when I was 8
Well,
years
yeah, we were all doing that, Ruslan. I mean, yeah, that's very important for an artist. Fight your parents, and make sure that make sure they give you lessons, even if they oppose them. Make sure they give you lessons on instruments and languages and so forth, because that's sort of what this show is about.
You know, Mozart lived a short life, right? What, 35 years?
35 years.
35 years.
Yeah, but when you actually think of all of the great works he did. You know, one day I was riding in an elevator in a hotel, and I walked into the elevator, and a little family came into the elevator, and they were playing Eine kleine Nachtmusik of Mozart, and the
Just
kid...
for those who don't know, let me sing there's a tam, pa pam,
Right.
pa 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 pam, pam. Everyone knows that melody, right?
He just passed his Metropolitan Opera audition, by the way. And the little kid said, Amadeus.
Aha!
And like about a 5-year-old kid, because he had seen the movie Amadeus.
Yes, that famous movie
Yeah.
done by Milos Forman. You know, it was nominated for 40 awards.
I
8 of
know.
them were Oscars, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, I actually have a little excerpt from the movie right here we might play.
Uh-huh.
You know, what fascinates me with Mozart, short life, right? But the moment when he lived, when we had Beethoven, We had Haydn. By the way, Haydn cello concert will be played on
That's
Saturday
right.
night
Russell
as
will be playing
well.
Haydn Cello
Yes.
Concerto Number 1.
And then
Mhm.
Mozart and Haydn and Beethoven belong to those classics. It's truly classical music. Interesting life story, right? By the way, everyone, if you have a chance to watch the movie Amadeus, it's available on Netflix right now, everywhere.
Absolutely,
Watch
yeah.
it. It's
Mhm.
a really phenomenal movie to watch. Not because it was Mozart or, you know, his life story and etc. It's just interesting movie to watch. It got all
think-
this, you know, awards for reason.
Yeah, I think what it does, as do many movies of this type, even though they may not be totally accurate in their depiction of
Correct.
the life,
Yeah.
they are sufficiently accurate to give a real impression of what things were like at that
Correct.
time.
Yeah. Personalities,
personalities,
characters,
and
yeah.
his fights. I mean,
attitudes.
We don't know if Salieri really poisoned him.
Well, that's what I
We
was
don't
getting
know
to.
that,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
But
yeah.
hey, it's a good story.
But, you know, who was Salieri? He was Italian, right? He was Italian in, guess what? Vienna, right?
Mhm.
1700s, second half of 18th century. And who is ruling the music scene in Vienna? Italians and Antonio Salieri, who is not considered the most talented composer now, but at that time he was the prime composer.
Absolutely.
And the movie starts with Salieri trying committing suicide,
Mhm.
screaming that he killed Mozart.
Yeah.
Now, truth to be told, the legend says, right, that the general doctrine says that Salieri apparently, in fact, poisoned Mozart, invited him on the dinner a night before Mozart died, and apparently after that Mozart. I don't think so. I cannot imagine Salieri being in this position of prime composer, poisoning Mozart, who was at that moment pretty much poor, musician. Can you imagine?
I don't imagine it either, but it certainly makes for a good storyline. And I think that there was, I think what they're trying to point up is that there was that rivalry
Correct.
between them. And of course, you might have to remember at that particular time, just almost as that we are today, competing musicians. We have some music coming out here. I didn't recognize that tune. I don't know if our audience heard it. If any of you recognize that tune, please phone in. And by the way, you know what? You can phone in to us here at the Cool Classics. And the number to phone in if you want to talk to us live is 323-473-3100. So you can pull that once again, 323-473-3100. 00. And you can discuss any of your musical problems with us or any questions you might have.
Any problems you can discuss.
If you have to find an agent or whatever, just let us know. But back to this.
Back to Mozart.
And back to
Salieri,
even
yeah.
in the present day. Because our goal on this show, in a sense, is to say that, much of what we do is old-fashioned. Our music dates back 200-300 years. But many of the same issues that occurred 200 or 300 years ago still happen
but
today.
you know what? I'm not sure if it's old-fashioned.
No, it's not old-fashioned.
You know what? I remember an interview that Isaac Stern, the famous violinist, gave in Big Hall of Moscow Conservatory. You know, he spoke Russian, by the way.
Did it?
Yes, I heard it with my own ears.
Really?
Yes, one of the greatest American Jewish violinists of 20th century. And he was asked this question, like, do you play avant-garde music? And he said, yes, I do. I play Mozart, Beethoven.
It's true.
And
No, old-fashioned.
Schumann. They
Old-fashioned.
all were
Yeah.
avant-garde composers.
Right. Our attempt is to kind of show that all of this stuff has a very contemporary feel.
Correct.
And it can constantly be recreated with new ideas and make it. For example, one of the things that we do, the instruments that they played Mozart's symphony on 300 years ago, 200 years ago, were slightly different from the ones today.
Correct.
We play them on more modern instruments today. Sometimes we hear this music on synthesizer, or we hear them in electronic forms, or we hear it transposed. I've heard Mozart pieces for instruments actually being sung by voices or something
Vivaldi,
like that.
I mean, everyone knows Vivaldi's, the
yeah.
seasons. But you know what I wanted to say also, in my opinion, this is not old-fashioned by any means, because this art talks about feelings, emotions, and ideas that are permanent, that were actual in 5,000 years ago, and 3,000 years ago, and 100 years ago, and will be quite up to date in 1,000 years. Look, the mother will always love her child. The sun always will be up there in the sky, and there will be happening day and night on the planet of Earth as long as we can imagine. So that's what this art is about. That's why it's been in existence for so long. That's why it didn't disappear. You know?
I agree, because it has sort of a timeless inner sense to
Correct.
it, which you
Yeah.
kind of bring it. And bringing that up, we brought up the parent will always love the child will always love the parent. Ruslan and I come from really quite different backgrounds.
True.
We might have had some similar parenting backgrounds, which might have led us to our particular. I don't know. Ruslan and I have never discussed this, and
Yeah, we
so now
honestly never
we're
talked
discussing it in front of a few 100,000 people. So here we are. But this is interesting for me. I've never quite heard from Ruslan. Ruslan's from Russia. What his background was like and how his parents supported him in his quest to become a musician, or
It's a long story.
Ruslan, make it shorter, Ruslan. We
okay.
have
Well, look, my mother is a pianist, right? My father
yeah.
is an engineer,
yeah.
and as soon as I was born, I was exposed to music making. My mother is a professional piano teacher.
Yeah.
Boy, I hated piano. You know, parents want their children to do better than their other students,
Yeah.
obviously, you know. And I think I was 7 years of age. I remember that day very well when my mother was trying to teach me piano. I had to play this piece called Fugue. It's a few voice piece on the piano. Weather was wonderful, exactly as today in Los Angeles. Hello to everyone in Canada and
Yeah, right. And
in
don't
Russia.
come here. We're crowded enough. Unless you're going to come to our concerts.
on Saturday night at 7 p.m.
That's right.
And my friends, neighborhood kids, were playing soccer outside. I could hear the ball, and I'm sitting there playing this fugue, you know, in front of this big brown box, which I honestly didn't like much. And there is a moment when I play a note with the fifth finger instead of fourth finger. You know, when I play on the piano, each fingers are numbered, so you have to hit the notes with the right fingers. My mother says, it's written with the fourth finger. I play again, hit it with the fifth finger. So it's with the fourth finger, I have to play it with the fourth finger. I'm playing again, I play hitting with the fifth finger. So why are you playing it with the fifth finger? I said, what's the difference? Who cares? That was the last straw. All of a sudden, it was a dead silence in the room. My mother stood up, went behind my back, went to my father's room, closed the door. I didn't hear what the conversation was about, but I heard clearly her saying two things. Through my dead body. And the second thing, she said, he has to be an accountant. She was done with me. So I was brought to a music school. It was Soviet Union at that time. Schools were numbered. I remember it was music school number 7. And I had to take an entrance exam. And I was brought into this big room there wasn't good at that day. About maybe a dozen elderly individuals in the room. They weren't particularly friendly, and I was terrified. They asked me to clap, to sing a song, to speak a poem. I couldn't do anything. I was just in a state of shock. I was just standing there trying to do something. Didn't happen. So they announced my parents that I have no talent, no sense of rhythm, no music, gift of any kind. My mother was surprised, to say least. And, in Soviet Union, education was free. But music education was free only for talented children. Well, since I was not considered talented any longer...
No, because you're now going to be an accountant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My parents had to... were required to pay for my piano lessons at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was... I remember the number. It was 25 rubles, Soviet rubles, a month. For comparison, my mother's salary was 100 rubles a month.
So a quarter of your mother's
Quarter of my mother's
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's all. So my mother said, forget it. No way we'll be paying that kind of money. At that point, the director of the school called and he said, we have a wonderful cello teacher. And the cost of the lessons is only 7 rubles per half a year. And guess what? My mother said, okay, we will take 2 lessons. If the child likes it, we'll continue. We took 2 lessons. I remember those lessons very well as if they were yesterday. Later, my mother said it was really strange. They brought the cello in the room. I still remember the smell of the cello, believe it or not. It was 30 years ago. And I just grabbed it and started playing it. And that was it. Yeah, so when people ask me, why did you become a cellist? It's a pure economy. It was cheaper.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're certainly happy, obviously, that Ruslan did not go into accounting. That is, his mother obviously relented. We're happy about that, too. And we're happy that he's here in the United States. And just to recap, Ruslan and I will be doing a concert together with the Glendale Phil in Glendale.
On this Saturday.
Saturday night, 7 p.m. You can Google that, I guess, Glendale
Yeah, Glendale
Phil.
Phil, or just go glendalephil.com.
Okay.
And the concert will happen at the First Baptist Church of
In Glendale, right.
209 North Louis Street.
Yes. And
Free
he will
cake.
be playing a cello concerto, the Haydn First cello concerto.
Mm-hmm.
But also on that program, we're going to be doing some other wonderful pieces. Appalachian Spring by
Correct.
Aaron
By
Copland,
Copland,
which maybe
yes.
you'll get to hear a bit of
Mhm.
when we take a break. And then we're also doing a lovely, lovely piece by this Swiss composer named Arthur Honegger. And I was just talking to, we were talking the other day to Rich Caparella, who's going to be our narrator for that, our MC for that concert. And he says, well, I'm glad you're doing that piece by Honegger. That's the best piece he ever wrote. But you know, Honegger did write another piece that's really good, which I've conducted a number of times. It's called Pacific 231. And it's a piece that all of you out there in the cyber world there should get a copy of. He wrote about a 6-minute piece which describes the starting of and the progress of and the slowing down of an old steam train.
Oh, wow.
So it starts out with chug, 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 and gets faster and faster and makes all these noises, and then it slows down at the stations. It's a fabulous piece called Pacific 231. So, but we're not doing.
But what we are going to do, what we are doing today, we are introducing some of these pieces, and we'll play excerpts from these pieces,
Yes,
and we'll have
good.
a guest as well. And then next week, next
Oh,
Thursday,
that's right. Next week.
tune
Yes, yes.
to us. We are not going to be here, but the music, the pieces that we'll introduce today,
Right.
will be played in its entirety, so you guys can listen for it next Thursday at noon. Those pieces that we'll hear the excerpts from Mozart Symphony, Haydn Concerto, and Appalachian Spring by Copland.
Absolutely.
And we are going to talk a little bit about these pieces right now to kind of give you an incentive what those pieces are about, how to process them, and how to feel about those pieces. So
Absolutely.
that's kind of our
And you know, for just convenience's sake, you know, LA Talk Live is on a million different sources. Your internet radio, you have iTunes, AHA, Radio Flag, Live 365, TuneIn, you have Ustream, YouTube, Apple TV, TiVo, Roku. Cars and smartphones, if you have a Chevy, you can get it on TuneIn. You can get it on Ford. And then your Mini, you have many, 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 many sources to hear LA Talk Live. And there's a whole range of tremendously interesting shows on this incredible network. And of course, we're attempting to be the most interesting.
We are already the most.
But so,
Yeah.
we have some applause on that.
Look at that.
And once again, I want to remind you that you can call in to us at 323-473-3100.
Okay, now Frank, I have a question. So
Yes,
back to
yes.
Mozart, okay?
Yeah,
Back to music,
yeah.
because we are going to play a little excerpt from Mozart's symphony, right? And we actually had first
Oh,
movement
oh,
of
you
the
have
Mozart
the-
symphony
okay,
played
cool,
in the
that's
beginning
great.
of the
Yes,
show.
yes, yes.
Geniuses, right? What makes genius a genius?
Who knows?
What?
Do you know? I don't know.
Well, look, why don't we listen to Salieri?
All right, I would say,
Why-
okay, I'll say one thing. What makes, to me, a genius is a person who, at a very early age, can show the maturity of what they do. They may not do it as mature as they're going to later do it, but they show a certain connection to whatever they're doing, whether they're playing the cello, the piano, or composition, beyond their years. It's like there's a certain genius in that. If you can pick up a cello at age 8 and play a piece of music that, like, my God, this kid's only 8 years old. Or in the case of Mozart, where he could take a style like a symphony, which is a complex style, and come up with a symphony that actually projects some of his later music and do it very effectively and
But
charmingly.
have you noticed, like, particularly with there are talented composers, right, or musicians that talent, and there are geniuses. They are kind of above everyone. And there is something that I noticed with Beethoven, with Haydn, with Mozart. This, you know, the structure of the piece, the picture can be actually quite casual, but there would be one thing that they would just add that all of a sudden, like
a
you know,
revelation.
The crowds of Van Gogh, for instance,
Right.
everything's but he just added those few crowds,
Right.
and all of a sudden
Right,
everything.
right.
Let's listen for this little excerpt from Amadeus, the movie.
But you okay?
The opinion of Salieri, the guy who apparently killed Mozart.
Okay, I want our listeners to listen though with this in mind. It has been said that there are certain artists who have been composed like an artist, a painting, and they said why did they did it that way? They're so forward looking, and then they found out that the reason they were so forward looking is because they had something wrong with their eyes.
That's true. That's true.
You know, they had
Radin, one of those. Correct.
Astigmatism or something like that.
Correct.
And
Or
that's why
Manet.
they got
That's
that
true.
picture. Wow, look at that. That is so.
That's-
That's so awesome. That's so perverted. That's because they had bad eyesight.
But not in the case with Mozart, not in the case with Haydn. We know for sure. Okay, here's the little excerpt from the movie.
On the page, it looked nothing. The beginning simple, almost comic. Just a pulse, bassoons, basset horns, like a rusty squeeze box. And then, suddenly, high above it, an oboe. A single note hanging there, unwavering. Until a clarinet took it over.
You know, we actually got a request to
Sweetened it into
explain.
a phrase
let's-
that
Oh, are
such
we
a
still listening?
delight.
Okay. We're listening to Salieri here.
But the music is of Mozart.
And Mozart.
This was no composition by a performing monkey.
It's a great line.
This was a music I'd never heard. Filled with such longing, such unfulfillable longing. It seemed to me that I was hearing the voice of God.
Here we go.
Awesome.
Okay.
You know, we were asked by a questioner, what in the world is a symphony? The symphony is a form. It was established in Vienna, actually in Hungary, originally, Esterhazy. It's a big form for an orchestra. It is usually 3 or 4 movements. In the case of the symphony that we're doing on Saturday night at the Glendale Phil, it's 3 movements. This is Mozart's first symphony. But the form of the first movement is very, very strict. It usually has 2 themes. Those themes are contrasted a little bit. Then they're embellished upon, we'll call it that, and then they're called developed, and then they're brought back again, which is called the recap, a very, very strict form. The second movement might be a slow movement. And then the third movement might be a little more lively. It might be like a minuet or a rondo or something like that. And then the last movement is very, very lively and fast to show off the virtuosity of the orchestra. And concertos follow a similar form. So anytime you hear about a symphony, it's a big form. And here is something everybody says, should we clap between the movements of a symphony? And I always say, you know what, do what you want to do. Normally, if you feel that you don't want to do that, and we can then just proceed from one movement to the next, and then save all your applause for the last. But very often, I even love it, like when a player like Ruslan is playing a concerto, the end of the first movement is usually big and brash and wonderful and dynamic. And if you feel disposed to applaud at that point, it's also nice because it gives both the soloist and the conductor a little bit of rest, and they can go on to the rest. So that's just a little bit about a symphony.
But what I wanted to add, whenever there is a symphony or concerto performed, or a piece with a few movements, they all united with one
They have an idea.
more or
There's
less.
an
Yes,
ideal,
it's like
yeah,
reading a
yeah,
book with
yeah,
a few
yeah,
chapters.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
reading
yeah.
or watching a movie with a few episodes, essentially.
I usually think that the composer probably, when they compose such a piece, have probably put into the planning, I'm going to do a 3 or a 4 movement piece, and then they operate with that in mind. It's not like, I'm just going to create this movement and that movement. That they have a concept of the entire piece. when
Most
they-
of the time, there are cases when
yeah,
composer would compose
yeah.
one movement and then
Exactly.
add few additional
Yeah,
movements.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it varies. But at the end, when the piece is published and performed, they are united with the same key, with the same palette of colors,
Right.
with the same emotional
Right.
context. It's literally like reading the book.
Now, one thing that is interesting about symphonies and concertos, especially symphonies, I think, certain movements of certain symphonies become more famous than the whole symphony themselves.
That's true.
You know, for example,
That's true.
everybody knows da 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 dee dum, da 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 dee dum, da 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 da, the Andante Cantabile from the Fifth Symphony of Tchaikovsky. It has a life even outside of the symphony. But of course, I'll tell you, hearing it within the symphony is a very special thing. I mean, you have to be a little more patient and be willing to sit there for 45 minutes or so. But very often this happens, but this is a way in pop music too. You know, when a pop artist does an album, very often only one or two cuts on the album really become famous.
That's true.
You know?
Yep.
So it's
That's true.
quite similar. And you might liken it to that. You know, pop artists today, contemporary artists, will put an album out and they'll call it whatever they call it. They usually have, 10 songs on it. And that's like 10 different movements in my way, you know? It's all one album, but it's 10 movements.
That's true.
In a symphony, you might have 4 movements. In the case of some symphonies,
Sometimes five,
five
sometimes
movements.
6 movements.
Some
yeah.
have 6.
Sometimes
It's
only
the
3.
same
Mozart
thing.
symphony
Right.
has only 3
And
movements.
some
this
only
particular-
3.
And the early symphonies had only
And
one
only
movement.
one movement.
As a matter of fact.
Now,
right?
this is interesting, too. Mozart's first symphony, it's only 11 minutes long.
Well, he was a child, 8 years of age.
Well, that proves he wasn't a genius. He couldn't write it.
He added that one note over there that made it. That
So
made it through the
news
centuries.
is out. Mozart was not a genius. His first symphony was only 11 minutes long.
And only 3 movements.
That's right. Oh, my God.
But another composer that composed a lot of symphonies, like more than 100 symphonies, was Haydn.
Yeah, oh, my Lord, yes.
And such different personalities. Mozart tried working for the same
Esterhazy, yeah.
Esterhazy family, Esterhazy, and the famous thing, Esterhazy was so angry with Mozart's attitude that he actually pushed him off the stairs.
That's right.
By, punching him in the butt.
Yeah, right.
It's a historic. It's a
That's
true
right,
history.
yeah.
Haydn, on the other hand, with his personality, with his, often enough, Haydn's music is described as the flow of the river. There is certain element of calmness and tranquility and sort of a healthy appreciation.
Haydn doesn't seem to have too many conflicts in his music.
Correct. But you know what?
But it's beautiful.
But
his slow movement, the way you
Absolutely.
play the slow movement of the Haydn, though, there's a lot of conflict in that.
True,
It's
true,
beautiful.
True. But
Yeah.
speaking about conflicts, what I really like, a little legend about Haydn and his wife. They were married for 70 years. Haydn, by the way, was the healthiest of all, outlived everyone.
Yeah.
In 1809, when
That's why
Beethoven
Papa
was
Haydn.
yeah, when 1809, when Beethoven was deaf on both ears, Mozart was already dead. Salieri was about to go, to lose his mind. Haydn was still alive.
He was called the last man standing. As they
But he was apparently he had a very grouchy wife. And there was a period when Haydn spent quite a bit of time in London.
Well, actually, he got fired from Esterhazy.
True.
The prince, the second prince, took over, and the second prince gave him his stipend, but he didn't want him around Esterhazy.
Correct.
So Haydn went to London, and it became famous kind of over again. In Haydn.
But here's the thing: at the moment when he was going to London, his wife requested that he would write her letters with the reports every day or every other day, and she would write him back exact directives, what to do and what not to do. She was quite controlling, apparently. Well, guess what? After they both were dead, and researchers, were going through their papers, they found 2 boxes. And one box was the letters of Haydn to his wife, and they opened those letters and they are full of love. Darling, thank you very much for your wonderful suggestions. They're so useful, etc., etc., etc. And the second box were the letters of her letters to him, and guess what? None of them was opened.
Oh boy, what a treasure trove that would be! I would guess, wouldn't it? Pretty amazing, I'll tell you.
But it kept them together for
Yeah.
60 years, I
Long time. I
Long
know.
time.
It's
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
think. Remarkable.
I want to remind you again that we're on latalklive.com. And for those of you who might want to call in, you can certainly do that at 323-473-3100.
And since we have to go into advertisement probably in a few minutes, what
Yeah.
I want to do, I want to play the beginning of second movement of Haydn's cello concerto,
Which is gorgeous.
that
by the way.
has that note that Salieri was just talking about. So let's listen for it just a little
Okay,
bit.
sounds good.
Here it comes. Haydn, C major cello concerto, second movement, and you will hear that note when the cellists start. Yeah, but let it play for at least 2 minutes or so. Okay. We need.
Hey, this is the second movement of the Haydn #1 Cello Concerto, which Ruslan and I will be performing on Saturday night at the Glendale Phil. So, Ruslan, what are you thinking of this?
Of this piece?
Yeah.
Oh, I like it.
You play it like you like it. I do too. You know, again, this piece is very economical in its constructions. 3 movements, not a huge orchestra, 2 oboes, 2 horns and strings, no timpani, no percussion, no anything. But it's so filled with music. It's just
and
amazing.
emotion.
Yeah.
And the first movement is fast, and the third movement is fast.
fast.
We are
But the
introducing
second
right now the
movement
second
is
movement.
eloquent.
It's like a prayer
Yeah,
essentially. It's
yeah.
so intimate,
Yeah.
and it really opens the heart.
Yeah.
You know, when I play it, it's literally a prayer. And because the concert will be happening at the church, at the First
Oh, it's
Baptist Church of
perfect, yeah.
Glendale, it
Mhm.
actually the setting makes it absolutely perfect for this exact piece. So I love this concerto. Now, was composed in was discovered. This piece was discovered
61.
in 1961.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
For what 200 years we didn't know of this.
Yeah,
piece.
isn't that amazing? Now, and this kind of fits what we talked about before. Hear how amazing. A piece, about 200-year-old piece, didn't see the light of day
Correct.
for 200 years, and then someone found it in a
Correct.
library or in a drawer or whatever, and suddenly a new cello concerto never been heard, and first heard in 1961.
And once it was discovered, once it was played, it became truly a hit in
Absolutely.
classical music
and deservedly
world.
so.
Absolutely, it's a very
Yeah.
effective piece.
Yeah.
Remarkable, really easy to process to pretty much any listener from all walks of life.
Right.
Great, gorgeous piece, absolutely astonishing piece.
By the way, there are not many cello concertos, and I have to say this: Ruslan and I premiered a cello concerto last year called
yes.
Bestemming with the Glendale Phil. But Ruslan will be premiering on Sunday, which happens to be Ruslan's birthday, January
Yes.
11th. He'll be premiering a new by Masa
Mitsumoto.
Mitsumoto
He's a Japanese
at the
composer.
Olympia Youth Symphony in the
At
San Gabriel Auditorium, and that's at 4 o'clock.
3 p.m.
3
It's a
3
3 p.m.
p.m. on
pre-concert
Sunday.
talk is at 2,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's free admission concert, by the way.
So
it's nice.
that's another thing for you to check out. You can go online and check that. A brand new cello concerto, never been performed, and Ruslan will be doing that on
really great
Sunday.
music. Very
yeah.
classically written. No weirdness
Yeah,
in this
yeah,
piece.
yeah.
Absolutely. So I
So-
strongly recommend. Now, why don't we jump from 18th century to 20th century?
20th. We're not in the 20th century. We're at the 21st now, right?
21st now.
Right. I'm the only one that's still in the 20th because I don't have a computer or cell phone. But that doesn't prevent me from saying that we're on latalklive.com.
And check GlendaleField.com
Yeah, right.
as well, right? Aaron Copland.
Oh, wonderful composer.
You met with him in person, didn't
I
you?
did. I met with him in person. When I was in school, he gave a seminar, and I was there. He was very old at the time, but a lovely, thoughtful, kind of a guy. Aaron Copland was Jewish Russian descent, interestingly enough, and wrote wonderful things such as Appalachian Spring, ballet, Billy the Kid, his Third Symphony, incredible, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful ballets. And we're performing the suite in the original form
Of 13 musicians.
Of
Yeah,
13 musicians, which is the way Aaron Copland wrote it, of Appalachian Spring. And the story is about a young couple just getting married in Pennsylvania. They're Shakers, a sect, a Christian sect in Pennsylvania, very plain, wear very plain clothes. But they build a house and they dance, they're getting married, and it begins very tenderly. And then there's a big party scene and the dancing gets more, they dance and they get, and then there's a wonderful thing, a hymn tune. It's called The Gift to Be Simple, Gift to Be Free. It's the da-dum, ba-da-dee-da-da-da-dum, da-dee-dum, da-da-deem, dum-dum-dum. And then it ends at the end of the day after their wedding. The sun is going down, and it ends as it began, tenderly and beautifully and ethereally, as this new married couple settle.
So essentially, it's a love story.
It's a love story. Yeah, it's a love story.
Shall we listen for the very beginning?
Let's do that.
And guys, listen for this beginning. And that's what we talk about. Just one note you will hear. The beginning of this piece is just a notes kind of coming together like a sunrise.
Right. That's
pretty
beautiful.
much.
It really
So
is.
here it comes.
Yeah.
Appalachian Spring by Copland.
Thank you for tuning in to LA Talk Live, reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we're more than just talk. Stay tuned.
Hi, this is Alina inviting you.
Hi, this is Dick and Sharon, inviting you to join us every Monday at 3 Pacific for LA Progressive Live.
Join us as we cover the progressive landscape both locally and across the nation.
So don't forget to tune in to LA Progressive Live every Monday at 3 Pacific.
Exclusively on latalklive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B, Radio Flag, TuneIn Radio, Live 365, AHA Radio, TiVo Radio, and Apple TV Radio.
Or just watch and listen directly at latalklive.com and LA Progressive Live. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening and viewing pleasure.
This is LA Talk Live and LA Progressive Live. We are more than just talk.
Hi, this is Elena inviting you to join me every Wednesday at noon for Elena's Beauty Talk and more, exclusively on LA Talk Live. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream.tv. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, this is Frank,
And this is Ruslan.
inviting you to join us every Thursday at noon Pacific Time for the Cool Classics.
Join us as we discuss classical cool in the arts. What has happened, what is happening, and what will happen.
So don't forget to tune in to the Cool Classics
Every Thursday at noon Pacific.
exclusively on latalklive.com.
You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, R&B, Radio Flag, TuneIn Radio, Live 365, Aha Radio, TiVo Radio, and Apple TV Radio.
Or just watch and listen directly to Cool Classics on latalklive.com.
Classic Radio, handcrafted for your listening and viewing pleasure.
This is LA Talk Live, and this is Frank.
And this is Ruslan.
And we are more than just talk.
Si vous me disiez que la terre a tant tourné vos offenses, je lui dépêcherai pensa. Vous l'avariez fixé sur terre. Si vous me disiez que l'ennui vous vient du ciel trop fleuri d'astres, déchirant les divins cadastres, je franchirai d'un coup la nuit. Si vous me disiez que l'espace assez vide ne vous plaît point, chevalier Dieu, la lance au poing, j'étoilerai le vent qui passe. Mais si vous disiez que mon âme est plus à moi qu'à vous, madame, je blêmirai sous le blâme.
Hi, I'm Frank.
And I'm Ruslan.
And we're on the Cool Classics. And I want you to know this beautiful piece that you're hearing by Maurice Ravel in the background. It's called Chanson Romanesque. And it's from his songs about Don Quixote. He actually wrote about Don Quixote, one of the most famous characters in literature. And I might also say, not only is it a recording, but sitting here right next to us at the table here on latalklive.com is the singer of this beautiful song, Mr. Ralph Cato. And Ralph, welcome to the Cool Classics.
Thank you, Frank.
And there's your applause. Well deserved. Well deserved. Yeah, that's right. Applause from 200,000 people. Ralph is very Ralph is accustomed to a lot of applause because Ralph is one great singer. And this is from a recording that Ralph and I did. I was the pianist on this, and Ralph and I have collaborated on many things, including symphonic things, opera things, and so forth and so on. So we're happy to have him as our first guest on our first show. So Ralph, what do you think of the show so far? Do you like it?
I think it's great. I really enjoy listening to you guys and all the great music you're playing, and I feel very fortunate to be here with you.
Oh,
so
great.
Thank you.
Wonderful. You know, Ralph said just before we came on air, he says, I don't know what's going on. I said, don't worry about it. We'll tell you. and actually, we're feeling our way here. So, Ralph, tell me, where are you from originally?
I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana,
Oh, great.
and came out to California right after high school to study music.
All right. Were you always a singer?
Well, no, actually, I started, my first encounter with music was in third grade, where I began studying the tuba.
Ooh.
Oh,
That's a
have one of
big
those wrapped
instrument.
around you? Are you kidding me? The tuba.
At 8 years old, yes. It was about the same size I was.
Oh, so I'm glad.
Oh, like Mozart composed
That's-
first symphony.
Yeah, Ruslan gave up accounting. You gave up at the tuba, and I'm a happy camper because I don't know. I don't know what I gave up. I don't know. I can't think about that. But so when did you actually start studying singing then?
Well, singing didn't come along until middle school, I suppose.
Yeah.
I was doing the choir. I think it was 8th grade when I got my first solo. We did the Holy City.
Oh yeah, I know that.
And the
Oratorio.
choir director, asked if I would do the solo, which I thought was a little short thing. And then I start to learn it, and it goes through the whole piece.
Yeah.
But what kind of voice? He's baritone, right?
Oh, baritone.
Baritone.
Yes,
So we need to explain
baritone
what a
voice.
baritone is, because there are different types of voices. There are
That's
tenors,
true.
Yeah,
baritones,
right. Yeah,
bass.
As many. I think this will play into something too with Ralph that's very interesting, and we're going to hear a couple of other cuts of Ralph singing because he does so many varied things. But Ralph is classified as a baritone, although Ralph does have fabulous low notes and he has fabulous high notes, and he's playing around now with some tenor stuff, Wagnerian kinds of stuff, which we'll see where all that goes. But I said, Ralph, don't lose that baritone ever, because it's one of the most gorgeous instruments in the world, and it really, really is. He has tremendous power. So if any of you want to become a tenor, you have to tighten your belt and maybe tighten your underwear. If you want to
sing really high.
that's right. And if you want to become a baritone, you can loosen your belt and your underwear a little bit, and and you're.
If only it were that simple.
I know. Ralph's also a teacher, so he knows the difficulties involved in all that. And then you get bass baritones, which are a little lower again, and then you get your bass voice.
Is there
which
anything
is your
lower
lowest.
than bass?
Profundo.
No,
Profundo.
profundo. Yeah, there are categories. There's called there's called a basso cantante, which is kind of not as low a voice and a sweeter sound than your basso profundo, which is kind of low and heavy.
But look, the roles in the operas, right? Usually
Yeah,
composers
yeah.
would dedicate them to a certain type of voice.
Absolutely.
Right?
Mhm,
So tenors would usually be these lovers and,
Right.
Yeah,
what
baritones are
what
often
the
villains of some. Baritones are often villains, and basses are often friendly, cuddly kinds of.
Of course,
guys.
villains always have the best music.
And the best music.
You know what?
Baritones really have some of the
But
best. music ever.
sometimes
Yeah,
in the
that's true.
opera, the basses get really interesting roles. For instance, Prokofiev's Three Oranges. You know,
Right.
the most popular
Right.
role in Bolshoi theater was the kitchen lady that was sung by bass. You can imagine when the bass.
It's true. It's true. All the roles are interesting, but I think the baritones are. But apropos this, now we're on voice categories. I think this is important to note because it shows how a person transforms himself, and I think that Ralph has transformed himself. Ralph, okay, his first thing was an oratorio, and that's a religious piece, a larger religious piece about a particular subject. In the case of the Holy City, it's about Jerusalem. But Ralph, tell me a little bit more. You also were a jazz singer.
Right. Well, after graduating with my bachelor's degree, I got involved with a group called the LA Jazz Choir, actually.
Ah, yeah, okay. I remember
and,
that.
that group, this was in the 80s.
Yeah.
And that group was very popular. We recorded several CDs, and the one that I was on, was nominated for a Grammy. It's called Listen.
Wow.
LA Jazz Choir Listen. And
great.
I've got a couple of tunes on there. So I got
Oh, we have to get a copy of that for next time.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have copies?
I have it in my computer.
You have it in
Had
your
I
computer?
known, I would have
Oh,
brought
good.
it along.
Okay. Because I just brought the one recording today. Okay.
Oh,
good.
yeah,
Okay.
you would have gotten a chance to hear me scat sing.
I'd love to hear.
We
that.
will
I'd
play
love
them
to
in
hear
the future.
Oh, you know what? Speaking of that, could we do a cut of Ralph? Is that a possibility, or do you want to?
A cut?
One of the because there's one in the Shadow of the Blues.
Oh, yeah.
Where you can hear. What number was that?
Shadow of the Blues.
Number
It's almost
9.
the end.
Number 19. It shows Ralph. This is off of our recording. We actually did this recital both in London, England, and we've done it in New York, and we've done it here as well. And it's from a song cycle by John Musto, and the name of the song is "The Shadow of the Blues."
Right. And the poetry's by Langston Hughes.
Langston Hughes.
Could be Hastings Street or Lennox Avenue. Could be 18th and Vine and still be true. Could be 5th and Mound. Could be Rampart when you pawned my watch. You pawned my heart. Hastings Street is weary, also Lenox Avenue. Any place is dreary without my watch and you.
Wow, this was
Holy
wonderful.
mackerel. Oh,
Yeah.
Ralph, you know what?
That was amazing.
I don't think I ever sit down to listen to this recording like this where I'm actually forced to listen to it. And you are really unbelievable. I mean, my God, what a voice. I mean, well, that's another cut. But, here's the thing that I'm addressing. Here you can sing with this tremendous style in this kind of quasi-jazz style with a piece that is obviously written like that, kind of urban, very urban music,
Yes,
really
it is.
urban music,
Yes, it is.
and very expressive. And then he can wail. He just did the Beethoven Ninth Symphony with me 2 weeks ago or so, and his voice just goes kicking out into the audience. He can sing Wagner, explode on that. He's a wonderful on stage. And so how then did you morph from this kind of thing back into the opera world or into the classical world?
Well, after I graduated and got involved with the jazz group, I thought that my career would go in that direction. And so I started to focus on doing open mics around town and going to the jazz clubs and all that. And at the time, a group called the Valley Symphony, West Valley Symphony Association.
West Valley Symphony, yes.
They were actually doing the Beethoven Ninth.
Oh, all right.
And didn't have a bass. And I got this call asking if I could sing it. I said, well, how much time do I have to prepare it? He goes, 2 weeks. I said, sure. So in 2 weeks, we went over and did the performance. It was out at the Performing Arts Center in Woodland Hills.
Just you got to listen to the Beethoven Ninth Symphony was. To begin with, when he composed it, he was deaf on both ears.
Right.
Couldn't hear
It was
a
his last
thing.
symphony.
That was his last
Right.
symphony. And he conducted it himself,
Right.
Yeah.
And at the end, when the first performance was over, for 10 minutes, he was afraid to turn around to the audience because he was afraid to see.
if
Couldn't
it was
hear.
happening.
That's
Couldn't,
right.
Was afraid to see whether people clap or actually, throw Rotten Tomatoes at him.
He didn't know
Yeah.
it was over.
He did
So-
correct.
He
Yeah,
didn't
that's
know it
the
was
thing.
over because he
didn't
couldn't
know.
hear
He
it.
couldn't hear a thing.
He was
but
totally in his own
that's
world.
that's by far probably his largest
Right.
piece.
Right.
And what he does at the last movement, he besides of orchestra, he puts a full choir plus the soloist singers
Right.
to
That
sing
has
the
never been done
ode,
before.
the ode to happiness, which originally was called ode to freedom. He was a big supporter of French Revolution,
Right.
the ideas of
But it
democracy,
became
etc.
Freude, joy.
Correct,
instead,
Freud
right.
just,
Right.
but but he at the end he switched it into
Right, right.
Now, how I morphed into
Yeah.
the classical music.
So you
I-
you
I
sang
did
that
this
Beethoven 9.
performance,
Yeah, right.
and I thought it went fairly well. And
Yeah.
the conductor came up to me afterwards, and he said, "Did you say you'd stop singing classical music?" I said, "Well, pretty much." He goes, "Well, you should start again." And so
Good advice.
I
Good
did,
advice,
and I went back to
yeah.
school and picked it up
Right.
and never looked back.
And I got to say this: not only is he a great performer and has his background from New Orleans to New York to Europe, he was also. I just had to bring these things up. Ralph, for a number of years, was the principal singer in the one of the greatest Broadway shows ever, Riverdance. He was the only one that really got a solo song to sing in Riverdance. And I remember I went to see him in Riverdance in any number of places. We went to, I was in London to see him when he was performing in London. I think I went to 5 of the shows, and then he took a couple of days off, and we did a recital in London. Then I saw him again at a couple of shows. I saw him on the East Coast in Providence, Rhode Island, I believe it was. And he sings kind of again heal their
hearts is what it's called.
A great song.
Well,
great
look,
song.
there is Ralph's website, right?
Oh, there's the website.
RalphCato.com. So
Yeah.
everyone, since we are on internet radio,
Yeah.
I guess everyone's familiar with the internet. Just go to RalphCato.com and you will read all this stuff.
That's CATO.
Yes. Now I have a kind of a little bit more personal. So you did jazz, you did Broadway, you did classical music. What is classical for you? What I didn't. What? When you say I do
I have to
classical
tell
music,
you,
what do
I have
you
to
mean?
tell you a different story that will actually answer that question. When I came to California to study music, my desire was to improve my singing and go out and get a record contract and sing pop music. And so I was really focusing on that when I first got out here. And so my teachers at Cal State Northridge, where I went to, put me in the chorus of an opera called The Ballad of Baby Doe. That would be
very
Douglas
famous.
Moore.
Douglas Moore. Mhm.
Right. And that was my first exposure to opera. And when I heard the singer, the soprano doing the Willow song and all of this, I just stood there and went, oh my God, I want to do that. And that's what really converted me. It was the level of artistry was just different than just going do up, and everything in four. So that is what inspired me. And from that point on, I started working toward becoming a classical artist.
But when you sing an opera, right, you have to be an actor. Because opera singing is not just going on the stage singing your thing and be done. You have to act. It's basically
You
acting
have to
and
act.
singing.
Okay.
Did you do any acting classes?
Yes.
What's the secret
I
of
have
that?
to go back to New Orleans now.
Aha.
When I was 16 years old, I got involved with a children's theater company called the Green Apple Court Children's Theater in New Orleans. And it was all straight acting. And we wrote a show called An Hour with Alice in Wonderland. And we did all the music and all the dancing. And I got involved with that, which led to my first straight play, which was A Member of the Wedding at the Gallery Circle Theater in New Orleans. So in New Orleans, I was involved with just straight theater. I wasn't really a singer, and I didn't really start acting until I got involved with the opera. So yes, the acting background is there. And my first show at Cal State Northridge was actually in the theater department. I played the role of Noah.
Oh, wow.
In what play?
In Andre Obie's Noah.
Noah. Okay. Okay, there you go. You made it off the ark and onto the stage, so that's good. Okay. All right.
You can
Lovely,
say that.
Lovely. Okay, that's good. So, okay, now the next step, though, Ralph. Now, Ralph is also a very highly educated person. He's more highly educated than I am, I can assure you. He has a Doctor of Musical Arts, I believe, from UCLA, right?
Oh my
That is
God.
correct.
Yeah.
Even higher than me.
Yeah, there we go. You see,
We have a doctor of music
he's a
here.
doctor of music.
Look out.
So this is and this is, I think, a remarkable fact. I mean, from New Orleans to Los Angeles through many other circuitous route, of course, but a tremendous education just to prepare himself, in a sense, for a classical education or a classical career. And he's also professor of voice at the University of California, Riverside, I believe at Valley College as well, and teaches voice privately. So here's another thing. Any of you who want to learn to sing gorgeously, I want you to make sure you call up Ralph Cato. You can look him up on his website.
RalphCato.com.
And you will get a link in some way to his voice studio. So do that.
Dr. Cato, tell us,
Dr.
what
Cato.
is music?
What is music? Music is man's expression of his feelings, his interpretation of life in an artistic way.
But isn't
it's
poetry
very-
or isn't language the same
Everything
thing?
comes into play with music. Music is just a vehicle for expressing perhaps the language and the poetry. It's almost like you have your poetry, your language, and music is the car you put them all in, and you go riding down in that. You know,
But you gotta have a driver, probably.
you have to have a driver.
And
Well,
the
that's-
MapQuest or Google Maps, too.
Yeah, that's called the conductor in the score.
I don't have MapQuest. In fact,
Our conductor
know
has
what?
no computer
no, let
at
me
all,
tell you
no
what
cell
happened.
phone.
This morning, I picked up Ralph up at his home, and I had found out that my wife said, "Oh my God, a tree fell over Silver Lake Boulevard," and I had to go to my Thomas guide to find out how to get to Ralph's house. Oh, it was great! I found out exactly, and I made it there really quick. But speaking of music, are we on camera? I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
holding up. Which camera do we have here? This
Right.
is our CD, Ralph and my CD. You can see that lovely picture of Ralph. I'm going to have it repackaged so that my picture's on there one of these days. But no, I'm accompanying on the piano, and Ralph deserves that position. Actually, there's a wonderful painting that my wife did of Ralph and me, and I want that to be on the cover of this. It shows me here and Ralph.
It'll be on the cover of our next one.
On our next one. Ralph
which
and I want to do
hopefully
another
will
album.
come out in 2015.
We'll do it in 2015. But we hope that you will check that album out. And the other thing we want to say, too, I'm not sure exactly how much time we have.
Okay, just a few minutes.
Just a
left
few
probably,
minutes?
Yeah.
I do want to say that...
But we can do that. We can do that. How about Marcel Proust? How about that?
Let's do this first. I've done it before
All right.
Marcel Proust. Then we'll go to Marcel Proust. We want to project to our next live interview, and that's going to be in 2 weeks from today. I don't have the date in front of me. But on this one is going to be a really, really iconic gentleman who is a member of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts. His name is Joel Schiller. And what Joel Schiller has done many, many things. He's been a ballet dancer. He's been an ice skating instructor. He's been a set designer. But his big claim to fame, and deservedly so, is that he was a production designer and art director for approximately 45 motion pictures, among which were Rosemary's Baby, the Buddy Holly story, Nuts with Barbara Streisand, and many, many, many others. The Loved Ones, the original Muppet movie,
Correct,
Ice Castles, many, many other
So
movies.
he started in 1962, and his latest movie was in 2006.
And what was the latest movie?
The Best Christmas Ever.
The Best Christmas Ever
Here we go.
was his latest movie. He's now retired, but still very busy in the arts, and he's a very close friend of Rusland and me. So if you want to know who our next guest is going to be, it's going to be Joel Schiller. We'll be talking largely about the film industry and also how Joel became so interested in music, because we have done many concerts at his beautiful home,
The Ivory Castle, yeah.
the Ivory
In Hollywood,
Castle in Hollywood, and we're often guests
So it's gonna
of
be
him
interesting
and Albert
conversation.
Heitzelman, who is another person we're going to have on one of these days too. But the interesting character with many, many stories. And you can find out who he is by going to Joel, Joel, at schillerart.com.
No, I think it's just Joel. It's just schillerart.com.
Well,
Because
no.
Joel at Schiller, that's
Joel
email
at
address.
schillerart.com.
No, that's his email address.
Oh, and what's his website?
Schillerart.com.
Okay, schillerart.com, and you can check out who that can be, and then you will see what we'll be talking to on that particular thing. You will be very entertained by him. He's got great anecdotes about all these incredible stars, from Barbara Streisand to Burt Lancaster, etc., etc., etc. Kirk Douglas. Okay, so we don't have that much time, but Rusland lives with Marcel Proust.
Here
we go.
Marcel, there's a famous questionnaire made by Marcel Proust that was published long time. And we don't have much time, so the answers need to be quite quick. We'll pick few questions for you to ask. And okay, ready? What is your greatest extravaganza?
Is that question directed at me?
Yes.
My greatest extravaganza? I'm not exactly sure how you mean extravaganza. You mean
Extravagance.
Your greatest extravagance.
My personal greatest extravagance. I was thinking. I'm sorry. I'm not really a very extravagant person.
Okay. Who has been the greatest influence on you?
Musically? Or
Any.
just in general?
Any.
Probably
Any.
this gentleman sitting right here next to me.
Okay.
Oh, he's a political guy. He wants to get back on the show.
Okay, here is another question. What is your greatest fear?
My greatest fear? Oh, having to retire.
You don't have to ever retire, Ralph. You don't have to ever retire.
I don't think I will.
No.
On what occasion do you lie?
Lie? Almost never. I don't lie.
I don't think Ralph is really an incredibly truthful person I've found throughout life.
I don't lie.
Where would you like to live?
To live? Ideally, perhaps Hawaii.
Hawaii. Okay, that's a
Hawaii.
new one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to pick one from here. What do you consider your greatest achievement? I really like that one.
My greatest achievement? Getting my doctorate.
I think that's a big one. That's
Getting my doctorate. When
Yeah.
I originally started college, I only planned on getting a bachelor's.
Yeah.
And the next thing I knew, I was at USC getting a
Right.
master's, and UCLA called and said, "We want you." So
Right.
doing that was a wonderful thing. Of course, singing all over Europe was a wonderful thing too, and visiting most of the planet, New Zealand, Canada.
He used to call me from all these places. I'll tell you, it's great. I'm in New Zealand. Oh, okay, all right. I do have a question. What would you consider? And this is sort of a Ruslan Frank Proustian kind of a question. What would you consider to be you would want your legacy to be to other people when they think about you?
Artist. An artist, a sensitive artist, an artist who was in touch with the times, and who had high standards of excellence.
Bravo. I couldn't imagine anything greater than that, actually. And I know that we're going to be wanting to have you probably back on the show again, Ralph.
Thank you.
Because not only you're interesting, but you are certainly a great artist. And my partner here, Ruslan.
Thank you.
You are something else.
And our partner, Frank.
Our partner, Frank, who is also something else.
And you know what? I hear kind of music drifting into the ether here, into the cyberspace. And it's from our cut on the concert. This is the wonderful aria di Provenza from Verdi's La Traviata, in which the father is asking his son, give up this prostitute. She's not any good for you, and you better come back to Provence and marry an honest woman, a person that doesn't have any baggage with her. And it's from Verdi's La Traviata. And of course, you're hearing all of this on latalklive.com, a great station. And remember, you can hear us on many choices, on internet radio and internet video, smartphones, cars, Chevys, Fords, Mini. My goodness, it goes on. AHA, Live 365, iTunes, goes on and on and on.
And tune up next Thursday at noon to all these sources and mediums, in particular latalklive.com, to listen for the cool classics.
Absolutely.
We are not going to be here, but the music will, and you will hear First Symphony by Mozart, which he composed when he was only 8 years of age, Haydn's Cello Concerto in C, and Appalachian Spring by Copland.
And keep listening to this station, and by all means, come to our concerts, because we're going to be at the Glendale Phil on Saturday night. Ruslan is the soloist. I'm the conductor, 7 p.m. in Glendale at the First Baptist Church. And then you can also hear Ruslan on Sunday on his birthday. And we won't go into the years at all, because he's just about 17 years old. Yeah. But he will be performing a brand new cello concerto, and that's with the Olympia Youth Symphony.
3 p.m. St. Gabriel.
And I'm Frank.
And I'm Ruslan.
And you are and this is our wonderful guest, Ralph Cato. And actually, there you go with our wonderful audience. And join us. You are hearing us live on LA Talk Live, and our show is, what is the name of our show, Ralph?
LA.
And it's the Cool Classics. Come on, Ralph. Once again, the Cool Classics on LALiveTalk.com. Thanks for listening.
LATalkLive.com. Thank you, guys.
We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.